Before we get into the podcast, I just wanted to let you know that my free meditation course is available for instant download below. So click below and sign up for my free meditation course. And this is the very same meditation that I use on a daily basis to calm my anxious thoughts, release tensions, and relieve my daily stresses. So if you want to get started on your meditation journey, click below and sign up for my free meditation course, which is available for instant download now. Welcome back to the Deep Topics with Shaun podcast. I'm your host, Shaun, and this is episode 6 of the podcast. I'm so glad and grateful that you've joined us here today. And if you're new to the podcast, please make sure to subscribe to receive upcoming notifications for further episodes. If you like this episode and want to see more, leave a like under this video or listening to this platform on Spotify, and leave a comment or review letting me know what you think about the podcast and whether or not you agree or disagree with anything that I've shared in this episode. And let's start a conversation about that. So, in today's episode, I wanted to share more about a recent psychedelic journey that I had and some of the learnings that I've taken from that trip. And these learnings are extremely profound because they have been the culmination of many years of engaging in psychedelic journeys. And having done this for quite a few years, it started off as something that I was merely experimenting with. And it turned into this beautiful, wonderful journey of healing and wholeness. And I am so grateful that I took the leap to take my mental well being into my own hands and to try to remedy some of the challenges that I faced in physical reality. I'm going to start this story by telling you again, referring to referring to a depressive event in 2019 after I left a second job. This job was in Joburg, and after leaving that job, I remember facing a severe depression where I was the closest to suicide I ever had been in my life and was the most depressed I ever was, even to the point of losing taste of food, not feeling sexual attraction anymore, not feeling a zest or vitality for life, and being unable to understand what the point of life was. And so I got to that moment, and I remember going to see a psychologist because that I think was necessary at the time to see a mental health professional. And I remember being diagnosed with a mild or moderate depression after filling in this type of survey that evaluated my response on various mental states and behaviors. So, after being diagnosed at that point, I remember receiving a prescription for antidepressants. And this prescription, it was an eye opener for me because prior to that point, I had heard about stories of other people living their lives by taking antidepressants regularly. And to me, I did not want to create for myself a life whereby I had to be on medication for optimal daily functioning. So it was an eye opening moment for me because at that moment, I was forced to make a decision about what type of life I wanted to live. And I was also forced to take a look at my life and to reevaluate some of the factors that were in play to try to change some of these things so that I did not have to rely on antidepressants for optimal functioning. So I didn't take those antidepressants. Instead, I did a bunch of research about how to alleviate depression and how to increase vitality. And I started to put some of those aspects into play so that I could change my life from a very mm, normal lifestyle change behavior way instead of the medication way. So the next year in 2020, I was at UCT, and I remember I made a friend, and I remember speaking about psychedelics with this friend, and we didn't yet know where to get it from, but we knew of a location. So we went to the location and we spoke to the specific individual about what our goals and our intentions was, and he said he knew a guy. So paid him, and he did know a guy and got it, and took the first dose, which was considered to be a microdose at the time, and it was relatively um, it was a microdose, and it was relatively an average, below average dose. But I remember the effect that it had on me, and the effect that it had on me was kind of releasing all of the tensions in my physical body and kind of expanding my sense of awareness beyond my physical body so that I could still walk and move in physical reality, but my consciousness was not so much attached to my physical form. It felt more expanded, it felt more free, and it felt more infinite. And that was the first time that I'd felt something like that, because prior to that point, I'd always heard about the effects of psychedelics on a person's consciousness, but I never experienced it for myself. And at this point, I did not know what to expect from it, but I did know to not to have an intention, but to not have too much of expectation, such that you might seek to control the trip too strongly. Year after year, I continued to engage in the psychedelic trip once or twice a year. And I did this because I started to realize that under, under psychedelic influence, there were mental and emotional states that were being brought to my conscious mind that made me see things that were hidden in my subconscious that needed to come out so that I could heal from them. And year after year, I continue to see some of the unhelpful and the unwholesome things that were hidden in my subconscious mind, maybe residuals of trauma, residuals of grief, sorrow, anger, and so forth, that needed to come up, that were buried deep inside, so that I could deal with them, I could see them, and I could heal from them. Now, when I say these things needed to come up, I do not mean that they needed to be expressed again. You know, one of the things that I've seen with some people on YouTube and other types of videos is like this uncontrollable emotional sorrow and grief whenever they touch some type of pain point in their subconscious mind. They're just wailing. It never resonated to me as to why that was necessary. And also reading a book. I read a book called Letting Go, The Art of Surrender by Dr. David Hawkins. And he mentions that in that book, he mentions that expressing the emotion does not necessarily lead to the healing of the emotion or the healing of that specific state. Rather, the healing comes from sitting with it and enduring its discomfort and being fully present with it. And so I took that learning whenever I had experienced a psychedelic event that made me see something challenging or made me experience something challenging, that I needed to sit with it. No matter how uncomfortable it was, I needed to sit with it because it needed to be seen, felt, and experienced as a part of me, which it was. So year after year, you know, doing the psychedelic trip once or twice a year, I continue to see in the moment the expansion of consciousness. I could see the things that came up from the subconscious mind, things that were seeking to be healed, that were seeking to be seen, and seeking to be resolved and integrated and so forth. And year after year, I continue to see progress in my mental well being. And I knew that this was something that I was looking for my entire life. I was always depressed for most of my life, and I was angry, and I felt trapped. I felt like, what's going on here? Whose life is this? Why am I doing this? I remember reflecting on so many of my choices, not being able to understand why did I do that? Why did I make that choice? Why did I choose things for my life that didn't feel like me? And there was such a long time of my life where I didn't know who I was or what I wanted. And I didn't even understand the idea of authenticity, that I could have what I want. I could ask myself what I want. I did not have to look at somebody else and think, how can I have that? I could instead look at myself and say, what do I want? What's right for me? What's good for me? It took a long time for me to get to that space. So as I continue to see the healing year after year, as I continue to see the improvement in my mental health and my mental well being, I knew that the psychedelic journey was positively impacting my well being. And I remember sharing the story with my mom sometime last year, where I shared that the psychedelic journey is something that I do on a biannual basis. And when you speak to people that are older and they have relatively conservative mindsets, there can be a bit of uncertainty about how they're going to handle this. In that discussion, I needed to share the positive impact of this thing, and also I also wanted to reassure her that this is something that's being done with conscious intention, and this is something that's being handled carefully, and this is something that is being respected and valued, and this is something that is truly it's truly proving beneficial. And we can all see, when we look at me and when we look at where I am today, that there's been profound and significant improvements in my mental health and my mental well-being, and primarily because of having had the courage and strength to want to take my mental health into my own hands and to say that, you know, I'm a human and I face some of these challenges by living in the society and living in physical reality. And humans throughout time have faced these challenges, but very rarely have they sought to medicate themselves for optimal functioning and well being. And how do they resolve it? There are things that we need as humans that in this current time we may have forgotten, and we may think that there are other things more necessary. For instance, sunlight is very much necessary for vitality, and social connection is very much necessary for vitality, and joy and play is very much necessary for vitality. Creative expression is very much necessary for vitality. And so, many of these things that are necessary for vitality were missing in my life. And as we saw, it led to depressive states, and it led to, despair about what really is going on here in my life and in physical reality. So this leads me to the recent trip that I had. And this one was profound because, well, they're all profound, honestly, but this one was profound on another level. And I think I was more prepared this time because I knew, you know, darkness. Well, I meditate often. So I know that when you want to facilitate a greater altered state of consciousness, that you must maximize certain factors. For instance, I must make sure that I'm in a silent space. I must make sure that I'm in a dark space. I must make sure that I'm on my own. I must make sure that my apartment is clean so that there's nothing affecting my mental stability. There's nothing to think about. I must assemble these factors to maximize the positive impact of this time. So I did all of those things. And having read and engaged with so many spiritual texts over the past 5 years, one thing that becomes challenging is like all of these spiritual texts are sharing somebody else's testimonial about spiritual experience, but really we're meant to have this experience for ourselves. And so, how then to reconcile that? How then to make sense of, well, I read all of this, but I don't really see it in my life. And one thing that became impactful in the psychedelic trip was that I saw it. I saw God, and God was not at all what I thought it was. You know, growing up in the society, we are often confronted with two types of God. We are confronted with the type of God that is outside somewhere waiting for us after we die. And then we're also confronted with the other type of God that is your inner highest self. And there appears to be a contrast in this viewpoint between Western and Eastern tradition. But over time, if we really apply logic to our understanding of God, we can see that there really must be only one God. And we worship this God under different names and forms, but that doesn't mean that my God is better than your God, and that your God is better than my God, or that you know God better than I do, or that I know God better than you do. And that is an eye opener because it makes us see that at the basis of many of the fundamental religions was a deep and mystical spiritual experience where an individual himself experienced God within himself and chose to share that testimony with others. Over time, it has become this thing locked up for certain people where we have been fooled into believing that only certain few people throughout history were able to connect with God inwards, and we're not one of those. We've been told that we're not one of those, and we're told that all we can do is praise, worship, and have faith. And really, that was the same perspective 2000 years ago. It's the same perspective now. And if anybody is familiar with any Bible, what we see from the New Testament is that Jesus acknowledged that the priests were withholding the keys to inner God consciousness and were making the people instead seek validation from the priests instead of the priest telling them, look inside yourself and see God as well. It turns out that it's 2000 years later and the same thing is happening. People are still in ignorance that God is within them, and it's not what you think. It's not a man in the sky. So, in my psychedelic trip, I remember, the usual, the expansion of consciousness beyond the physical body. I still had awareness of my physical body. I can tell where it is and what it's doing, what position it's seated in, and so forth. My awareness and my consciousness is expanded infinitely. And when I look around, especially because I'm in a dark space, when I look around, I'm not seeing the ceiling. I'm seeing it go on forever. And this perspective is not strange because when we close our eyes and when we look into the darkness, we really cannot see the end of the darkness. If we choose to apply conscious thoughts and logic to it, we could say we are looking at the back of our eyelids, but really we can't even see the back of our eyelids. All we can see is the darkness going on forever. So, similarly, in an altered state of consciousness, because the consciousness is expanded beyond the physical body, when you look up, which, sometimes it's been interpreted that God is up. But when we look up, we might see a ceiling or we might see a sky. That's because you're not in the right state of consciousness to experience the infinity if you are in your physical state. So when I was in an expanded state of consciousness and when I looked up, I could see it go on forever. And I could also see a presence looking back at me. Now, this presence looking back at me did not have eyes, and so it looking back at me was more like a knowing. I know it's there, and I feel it looking at me. I cannot see it because obviously it does not have a form, right? It does not have a physical form like I have, like I'm in a physical body right now. It did not have one. But I knew that not only was it looking at me, and I can feel it looking at me, that it's always there, even if I can't see it in my waking state. And it's always looking at me. And this in some terms is called omnipresence. Omnipresence, we know that God is omnipresent, we know that God is everywhere, and we know that God is always looking. And so in the psychedelic state, I was shown, I saw for myself that that is true. And it was great. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Like wherever I go, it's there. And not only is it there, it's like, I am it. I am it. I am it in a physical body. It is me. It is me without a form. Wow. Profound. Extremely profound. And now I'm in my, waking state. When I look up, I see a ceiling. I don't see it, but I know it's there now. I don't have to see it to know it's there. I have confirmed the truth of omnipresence through my internal experience. Now, omnipresence does not need my faith. It needs, I can go throughout life and I can always know that I'm, I'm watched. I'm watched. Wherever I go, whatever happens, I'm watched and I'm okay. It sees me. It always sees me. There's nowhere I can go where it doesn't see me. Not only is it looking through my eyes, it's also looking at me from above and maybe also from everywhere else. Because awareness does not have a focal point. Like when our eyes receive light, we can only see in a certain field of view. Like we can only see up until here, and we can only see up until here, and we can only see up until here, and we can only see up until here. Then we have to turn our heads to see the rest of it. But awareness, which is the characteristic of pure consciousness, or the infinite self, or the infinite being, awareness is everywhere. It can see all sides simultaneously. And so now that I have that validation that this infinite thing is watching me from above, and not only did I need faith for it, but I've seen it. I'm so glad and grateful. I'm so glad and grateful. And it was profound. So knowing from that trip that there's an infinite being and that I am not just part of it, I am it in one part. And being it in one part means that I have the same characteristics of it, but not as long as I am limited in a physical body. And that's why in meditation, what we do is that we diminish the senses, we diminish the physical body, we relax it so extremely that it becomes imperceivable. We calm the mind so that thoughts are not in the way. We try to make the infinite consciousness emerge by diminishing the obstacles. You diminish the obstacles and this thing emerges on its own, because it was always there and it was always fully present, but we just had limited perception of it. We had limited experience of it because there's this thing blocking, this physical form, and mind is blocking it. So we repeatedly, as you meditate over and over, you learn to diminish your whole self. You learn to diminish your whole self. You learn to diminish your whole self. And this thing emerges through called awareness. And you start to see that, I don't feel my body anymore. Just like sleep. But unlike sleep, my mind is not also asleep. My mind is awake this time. So I don't feel my physical body. My mind is awake. But my mind is also so quiet that it's clear. And I'm still here. I'm still here. It refutes the false belief that your existence is a creation of your mind and physical body. And you start to see that awareness that emerges itself in the deep meditation It is always there and it's always been there. And your body has entered into it. It has not entered into your body. So when your body dies, it merely continues its awareness, it continues its seeing, it continues its knowing. And so that also brings a certain freedom from death, because in the society at the moment, there's a there's a debate between the logical individuals about what happens after death, but really it was never a debate. It was just an ignorance to believe the great spiritual masters, because some of these people believe that their minds can offer them truth, even though we know physical reality is limited by our experience of the senses. So, in addition to seeing that omnipresent entity that is you and you are it, you also now have freedom of death, because you see that death is merely a condition of the body and of nature, and things are born and die in nature. But the awareness that you are, the pure awareness, it was always there, and it always will be there, and it was not born, it does not die. Your body entered into it, you did not enter into your body. But you can only start to see these things in the deepest meditation or in an altered state. I'm going to pause there for a second, and I'm going to remind you that if you want to get started on your meditation journey, then click down below and sign up for my free meditation course. And this is the very same meditation course that I use on a daily basis to calm my anxious thoughts, release my tensions, and relieve my daily stresses. So if you want to get started on your meditation journey, click down below and sign up for my free meditation course, which is available for instant download now. To summarize so far, in 2019, I experienced a major depressive event, and I struggled to understand the meaning of my life, because I had pursued avenues of life that were not in alignment with my authenticity. At the same time, I did not even know what my authenticity was. I did not know who I was or what I wanted, because I was always following the advice and guidance of others, and I was never really seeking internally for who am I and what do I want. In 2020, I engaged in a recreational psychedelic event with a friend and found that my consciousness expanded beyond my physical body, and that this provided a sense of freedom from physical limitations, which was very much something that I did not know I needed, but I felt so profound and beneficial to my mental health and mental well being. Prior to that, I was diagnosed with a mild depression and was prescribed some antidepressants, but I recognized that I don't want to live a life where I have to take medication to be healthy, whole, and functioning. And so I need to make some major lifestyle changes so that I could increase my vitality and feel the sense of aliveness again. I learned about the factors that I needed to put into play, and I started to put those lifestyle factors into play. Psychedelics was not one of those factors that I researched, but it was something that I experimented with to see what can this offer me, if anything. Year after year, since then, I've had a 2 times annually, maybe three, psychedelic event where I continue to heal. I continue to see things that were locked up in my subconscious mind, maybe hidden away, too painful to deal with, etc., etc. And these things I continue to see, they come up so that I could work with them, so that I can integrate, so that I could resolve them, and so that I could heal. In the most recent psychedelic event, it did not, it appeared that the theme of that event was not so much healing from trauma, etc., etc. It felt like the past five, it felt like the past 4 years of psychedelic trips was actually cleansing, filtering my mind and body from the traumas, impressions, all of those things, to make space for something else, something else. And the thing that I think it was making space for was the presence. Also, having read multiple spiritual texts from various religions over the past 4 years, it was challenging to actually experience the thing for myself. You read about the testimony of others, but you don't. I did not really have the experience of how does this feel. In this recent trip, I did have that experience, and I experienced two things so far that I shared in the past 30 minutes. The first thing was that in the psychedelic trip, I saw that the infinite presence is always watching me, it is everywhere, and in some ways, it is me and I am it. The second thing that I saw is that the infinite presence was never born and therefore it never dies, and that it did not enter into the body, but the body entered into it. And so, like anything else in nature, the body is born, it will die, but the awareness will persist because its existence is all that it is. It exists, it's there, and so it does not move or change. Instead, the body and the mind move or appear to move and change, but this awareness remains constant, consistent, and ever present. So I do not need to fear death because really my body might die, but the awareness that I am, it was never born, it will never die, it is infinite. The third thing that I saw is that the human nervous system is a receiver for infinite intelligence. And infinite intelligence is in the form of light. Just like a fiber optic cable has light traversing through it, and that light communicates information, which which is then used by our devices to perform various functions, so too can the nervous system receive light, which can then alter its physical expression and alter the types of functions that it delivers. So, in an average level, the receiving of infinite intelligence into the human nervous system at an average level makes life, it makes awareness, it makes the average human. At a greater level, it makes a thing called a Christ. It makes a Buddha, it makes a Krishna, it makes a Christ, it makes an enlightened being, one that is aware that it is the infinite entity that exists everywhere and that is all things. And so the point of that was that our job in physical reality is to allow more infinite intelligence into our nervous system. And the way to do this is by removing the obstacles, not by seeking more. It's by removing the obstacles. Some of the obstacles that are present are excessive pleasure, hatred, and evil, unwholesome, unhealthy emotional states, anger, guilt, shame. So, if we start to diminish these things, our nervous system will get to a state of relaxation where it's not so much bogged down by anxieties, by stresses, by worries and fears. And as it becomes more and more relaxed, it will accept more and more of this infinite intelligence or this light, and it will expand the consciousness to the state of infinity so that the Christ is not something that we become. It is more so when our higher self emerges in physical reality. It emerges in physical reality because we have just made it so easy for it to come through. When it's been done before, we've got a Krishna, we've got a Buddha, we've got a Jesus. Now, I know that some of the religions have gatekept this knowledge so that we believe we're average, random flesh bodies. Some have even taken it far to say that we are sinful, unworthy, and insignificant. But really, we are a work in progress. And being a work in progress means that it was already acknowledged that we're not perfect, but that we can be if we try and if we want to. And our perfect self is already waiting for us to find it. But it needs our effort and our action, and it needs us to take some challenging actions, such as being loving, being forgiving, being kind, relaxing ourselves, meditating, looking inward, seeking the higher self, contemplating infinity. We need to be doing some of these things if we say we want it. Unfortunately, though, some people have been misled into believing that saying you want it is good enough and you can sing about it and that's your connection with God. No, don't be fooled. Your connection with God, which from this episode, I hope you can take that God is your highest self, that is your infinite state of consciousness, and you in your physical body are one part of it that has all of the qualities of the full part. But your mind and your body are acting as obstacles, and through a practice of deep relaxation in meditation, you can diminish the impact of the mind and the body so that your infinite self can emerge in physical reality and that you can see truly what you were this entire time. When you see truly what you were this entire time, your experience no longer relies on faith and belief because you know for sure that you were never a human. You are always an infinite self. And my infinite self is your infinite self. And therefore, there is only one entity and it is operating simultaneously, not just in all of the human physical bodies, but in every physical body of every life form. And not just in every physical body and every life form, but in every physical form in the universe, even inanimate. It operates in all things simultaneously. That means to some extent everything is aware and everything is conscious, even though it does not look that way to our mind. So I hope that for you, this episode was as profound as the psychedelic trip was for me. Because for the past 30 years that I've been alive, I've really engaged in all of the topics about God and done my exploration about this doesn't make sense, this makes sense, this religion is saying this religion is saying that, that religion is saying that. I read these various texts, I learn about these various individuals, I learn about the experiences, you learn about what happens, but really there's a craving to know for sure. There's a craving to know for sure what is true. I think we're all searching to know for sure what is true, and we're all seeking for priests, pastors, gurus, saints, sages to show us, to tell us the right way. Really, 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 what you need to come to grips with that is you can only get so much for other people, but you need to enter into yourself, and that means closing your eyes. When you close your eyes, you're not closing your eyes, you're actually looking inside, and that's the first step. If you're familiar with any Jesus teachings, you know entering into yourself is something that he encourages often. And there are even ways of praying, like go into the closet, pray in secret, those types of things. They're allusions to darkness and silence that are very much teachings about meditation. And so do it. Start to learn that meditation is not an Eastern thing, it's not a mystical thing, it's not a Hindu thing, it's not a Buddhist thing. Meditation is a mental thing and it was always meant to help you find your infinite self in physical reality. It's so sad and unfortunate that, well, like you, I was also in that space where I had no idea about what God was. I was really searching here, there, and everywhere, waiting for the next person to tell me what is true. And after reading and exploring so many things, you start to find out that actually you are this infinite entity that was always called God. And it's not that you are it now, it's that when you diminish yourself, diminish your identity, diminish your physical self in meditation, diminish your mind, quiet it, make it so extremely relaxed that yourself emerges. You know, let me give you an example. When there's a garden, you plant a seed there. You don't really say to the seed, grow, grow, grow. You water it, you give it light, you give it air, and it emerges on its own because you have made the environment sufficient for its emergence. You remove the weeds, you remove the obstacles to its growth. You don't ever say grow, grow, grow. You don't ever make the seed grow. It grows when the conditions are right. So make the conditions right inside your mind and body and allow your infinite spirit to emerge itself, because that's what it will do. One final lesson before we end this episode is that your infinite spirit is unlikely to emerge itself if your nervous system is continuously stressed, because stress is an obstacle to spiritual emergence. The spirit cannot, the nervous system cannot accept more and more of infinite intelligence in the form of this light if it's too much agitated by the stresses of physical reality. And that is why we do meditation, so that we can train the nervous system to be more and more relaxed. And when we train the nervous system to be more and more relaxed, what we're also doing is that we're training it to accept more and more of this ever present light that is infinite intelligence, so that we can expand in consciousness and we can allow our higher self to emerge through our physical body. When your higher self emerges through your physical body, then it is what is known as a Christ. It is what is known as a Krishna. It is what is known as a Buddha. And you know that it takes a lot of work. It does take a lot of work. That's the reality of it. If it didn't take a lot of work, everybody would be doing it. But really, who's doing it? Nobody. People are misleading here and they're misunderstanding there, and everybody's in the dark. And just stop being in the dark. Stop being in the dark and know that God is your highest self, and you can make it emerge in physical reality. You can train your nervous system to accept more of the light of infinite intelligence, and you can allow your consciousness to expand beyond your physical body. You do not need a psychedelic trip, you just need meditation. I hope I drove that point home sufficiently. This psychedelic trip that I had, it was very profound, and I'm so glad and grateful. And it continues to encourage me to continue on with meditation, because this is where it started. When I was depressed in 2019 in Joburg and being like suicidal, whatever, going to the psychologist, getting diagnosed, getting that prescription, I was meditating during that time. It was so painful, but I was meditating. I was like, I can't handle what's happening in my mind and body at this moment. I just need to sit still and just, sit there and just sit with it. Whatever's going on, it's uncomfortable. Let me just sit with it. Little did I know how profound having the courage to sit with it was. And that's a tip, I guess, because meditation is not the easiest thing. You do have to sit there for a long time, but that's part of it. You know, it's like going to the gym. The weights are heavy, but you lift it anyway, because you know that your physical structure is going to grow in muscle. You do it because there's a purpose for it. It's not easy, but it's necessary. So too, meditation, it's not easy, but it's necessary. You sit there, it's maybe uncomfortable. It stops being uncomfortable after a certain point. As someone who's meditated for 5 years now, I did mention previously that, 1 hour 4 years ago was challenging. 1 hour now, it's like I could do more and I will do more. So, if there's anything I want to share and leave you with in this episode, is that I encourage you to meditate. I encourage you to remove all ideas about what meditation is and just sit there with your eyes closed for some time. If you don't know where to get started, then gladly, my free meditation course is available for instant download below. And all you need to do is click below and sign up for my free meditation course. And this is the very same meditation that I use on a daily basis to calm my anxious thoughts, release any tensions, and relieve my daily stresses, so that I can put my nervous system into a greater and greater state of relaxation, so that it can accept more and more of the light that is infinite intelligence and expand my consciousness. So too will you start, and you may not start with that intention. You may start with merely relieving your daily stresses, but get started anyways. So if you want to get started with your meditation journey, then click down below and sign up for my free meditation course, which is available for instant download now. Yeah, so, going forward, I think that I've seen the fruits of meditation, and I've seen the fruits of the psychedelic experience. And I feel more healthy, whole, and functioning than I ever have in my entire life. And I'm so glad that I had the courage to confront the darkness and was prepared to meet it with strength. At times, I may have been too self reliant. I know to rely on others at certain points, but I also know how much really to expect from others and how much really to expect from myself. And it's a journey. So the expansion of consciousness continues. My nervous system can relax to a greater and greater extent. It can accept more and more of the infinite intelligence. My consciousness can expand more. My meditations could be deeper. My meditations could be more intense. I could give it more time. And so there's still many things that I'm working on. I have not reached the state of perfection, but I've heard about it. And from what I've heard, it is a worthy goal. It is a worthy goal to pursue in this life. And really, in this society, no amount of corporate work will deliver my spiritual enlightenment. No amount of paying taxes will deliver my spiritual enlightenment. No amount of buying physical objects will deliver my spiritual enlightenment. No amount of pleasure will deliver my spiritual enlightenment. And so, for my higher self to emerge in physical reality to the extent of infinity, it requires a great work. And I have been and I will continue to do the great work that is necessary because I have not seen everything that the spiritual teachings are talking about, and there is more to experience. And so I use it as a guide to keep going. But I know deep down inside that the most important thing to focus on is the meditation practice itself and to master the practice, to not be too reliant on the outcomes. The outcomes are definitely beautiful and wonderful, and I'm so glad and grateful. But the practice itself is what is necessary to master. Because once I master the practice, then the infinite states become more and more accessible faster. And it's not about accessing it faster, it's about being yourself. It's about truly being yourself. And one thing that I've learned in my past 30 years is that I'm not a body and I'm not a mind. I appear as this way temporarily in physical reality for the time that I'm here, but really I'm this infinite being that is having this temporary experience. And it's not that I'm in my body, it's that my body is in me. Being an infinite being means that I am infinite awareness. Knowing that I'm infinite awareness intellectually and experiencing that experientially are two different things. It does not help to converse excessively about these things. We must experience it for ourselves. And so, getting to this point that I realize now that God is not a man in the sky, and God is not asking for my praise and worship and my faith. God is asking for me to see that I am Him and He is me. Not in this physical body, not as this physical body, but when I diminish this physical body and mind in meditation, then my true self emerges as the infinite awareness. And that is the thing that is God. In summary, we have been misled about what is God, and we are partially responsible for that due to relying too heavily on logic, thinking that how can I be an infinite being when I'm limited by my physical body? When you get out of that type of thinking, you realize that when you diminish your physical body, your awareness is still there, and that's really the thing that was God. That's why all of these religions are encouraging meditation, or like entering into yourself, like Jesus mentions in Christianity, because that's the way to start to see it. You must sit in silence in darkness for a long period of time, and your body and mind will diminish as they relax so sufficiently that this thing will emerge and you will see that it is you. You're not a mind and a body. You really need to diminish yourself in the meditation and see the thing emerge and then confirm it for yourself. So We are all the same being, simultaneously interacting seemingly as individual different entities when we are all it and it is us. And that's the way to proceed. Let's enter into ourselves, let's meditate, and let's all start to shed all of the obstacles and the false ideas and the mental blockages, impositions, and obstacles that are really holding us back from seeing what we really are. So, I want to encourage you again to practice meditation. It is not something that's religious. Meditation is not for the saints, it's not for the holiest, it is for everyone. Meditation is a mental exercise, and it just so happens to have this outcome of allowing our true self to emerge. So, if you want to get started on your meditation journey, then click down below and sign up for my free meditation course, which is available for instant download now. And when you download that meditation course, you will learn the very same meditation that I use and have used on a daily basis for the past 5 years to calm my anxious thoughts, release any tensions, and relieve my daily stresses. As you continue to practice your meditation with consistency and intensity, you will start to relax the nervous system to such a great extent that it will accept more of the light of infinite intelligence, and you will experience the greater and greater expansion of consciousness. And if you take it all the way, if you take it very, very far, that you will see the emergence of your Christ. Your higher self will emerge in physical reality, and you will have done the good work. So I wish you well. And I want to thank you again for watching this episode on YouTube, for listening to this episode on Spotify. If you like this video, if you like this episode, leave a like, leave some stars or whatever is available on your platform, and leave a review and comment letting me know what you thought about this episode. Did you agree with anything? Did you disagree? Leave your comment down below and let's have a discussion about this. Thanks again for watching this episode of the Deep Topics with Shaun podcast. And I want to wish you well, and I want to wish you a wonderful week further. Take care. This is Shaun. Bye, everyone.